Sit down. I need to tell you something.
You're scaring me. What is it?
I'm quitting my job. Monday's my last day.
You're what? Marcus, we have a mortgage.
You'll figure it out. You're good at figuring things out.
That's it? 15 years, and that's what you say to me?
I'm tired, Elena. I don't owe anyone an explanation.
You don't owe me an explanation. I'm your wife.
I can't do this right now. But you'll manage. You always do.
Say that again.
You heard me the first time.
No, I need to hear it again. I need to hear you actually say it. You're quitting, and I'm supposed to carry us, just like that.
It's not that complicated.
It's not. Marcus, I gave up my own promotion for this family. I stayed up nights so you could sleep before your 6 a.m. calls, and you're sitting there telling me I'll manage?
What do you want me to say?
I want you to look at me. I want you to remember who stood next to you at your father's funeral, who held this family together when you couldn't, and now you can't even give me a reason.
I don't need to explain myself to you.
Then I don't need to stay.
What?
You heard me the first time.
Elena, what are you doing?
Packing.
Packing what?
My bags. I'm leaving you.
You can't just leave me like this. Please stay.
I'm done, Marcus. Goodbye.
The sentence sounded almost casual. I'm quitting my job. Marcus said it while standing beside the kitchen island, one hand wrapped around a mug of coffee, the other scrolling through something on his phone. For a second, I thought I had misunderstood him. I looked up from my laptop. You're what? He finally put the phone down. I'm quitting. There was no anger in his voice, no hesitation. He said it the way someone might say they were changing restaurants for dinner. Then he added the sentence that made me slowly close my laptop. You can support us for a while. I stared at him, not because I was shocked that my husband was unhappy at work. I already knew that. For months, Marcus had been coming home later than usual. He had stopped talking about the projects he used to be proud of. He slept badly. He stared at his phone during dinner, and sometimes sat in the garage for 20 minutes after pulling into the driveway. I knew something was wrong. What I didn't know was that he had already made a decision that affected our entire family without telling me. And what Marcus didn't know was that, by the time he finished that sentence, I had already decided what I was going to do. I was going to pack a suitcase. Not because I wanted a divorce, not yet. Because I needed to know whether my husband wanted a wife, or simply a financial safety net. The life we had built. Before that morning, our life looked almost perfect. We lived on the 34th floor of a modern apartment building overlooking downtown Chicago. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, and at night, the city looked like someone had scattered thousands of stars beneath us. We weren't billionaires. We weren't even close. We were simply comfortable. I worked as a senior financial analyst for a healthcare company. Marcus managed commercial construction projects. Together, we earned enough to pay our mortgage, keep Nia in a good school, travel occasionally, and put money aside every month. At least, that was what I thought. Our marriage had never been about who earned more. Marcus made good money. I made good money. We shared responsibilities. That was what I believed. But over the previous year, something had changed. Marcus started working longer hours. I started handling more things at home. At first, I didn't complain. If he had a late meeting, I picked up Nia. If he traveled for work, I handled school meetings. If his company needed him on Saturday, I took Nia to her piano lessons and grocery shopped afterward. When his mother needed help fixing something at her house, Marcus would say, "I'll get to it." And somehow, I always ended up getting to it. There was a difference between helping your spouse through a difficult season and quietly becoming responsible for the entire season. I hadn't realized when one became the other. Then came the morning Marcus announced he was quitting. He walked around the kitchen island and pulled out a chair. "Tessa, I need you to hear me before you react." I almost laughed. That's usually what people say right before they say something I'm supposed to accept. His face tightened. "I've thought about this." "For how long?" He paused. "Months." I stared at him. "Months?" "Yes." "And you didn't think your wife should know?" "I knew you'd worry." "No, Marcus. You knew I would ask questions." He looked away. I closed my laptop completely. "Why are you quitting?" He rubbed his forehead. Because I'm done. That isn't an answer. It is to me. Then give me the answer I need. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, I can't keep doing that job. His voice had changed. It wasn't defensive anymore. It was tired. I wake up every morning already exhausted. I'm responsible for 12 people. Every mistake becomes my problem. Every deadline becomes my problem. Every emergency becomes my problem. He looked at me. I don't remember the last time I enjoyed my life. That sentence landed differently. I knew that feeling. Not exactly. But I knew what it meant to become successful at something you no longer wanted to do. I softened. Okay, I said quietly. Then let's talk about it. I already did. With who? Myself. That's the problem. His jaw tightened. I've got savings. How much? Enough. Marcus. I said enough. I stood up. You're asking me to support 3 people while you figure out what comes next. Temporarily. How temporarily? I don't know. I looked at him. He looked back at me. Then he said something I would remember for a very long time. You make enough for us to breathe while I figure things out. Us. That word bothered me. Because somehow, his decision had become my responsibility. Sut. By 9 that morning, I had already canceled 2 meetings. I couldn't concentrate. Marcus had gone into the bedroom to get dressed, acting as though the conversation had been resolved. I watched him through the hallway. He was calm, almost relieved. That bothered me more than the resignation itself. At 9:17, Nia walked into the kitchen carrying her backpack. She looked between us. Are you guys fighting? No, I said. Marcus answered at the same time. Not really. Nia narrowed her eyes. She had inherited that expression from me. What does not really mean? I smiled. It means eat your breakfast. She sat down. Marcus kissed the top of her head. I'll pick you up after school. Nia looked at him. You're not going to work? He froze for half a second. I noticed. Not today, he said. She looked at me. I didn't answer. That was when I understood something. Children don't need every detail to know when the ground beneath their family has shifted. They can feel it. Before we move further into the story, I need you to tell me something. Where are you watching from? If you like stories like this, make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you would love to hear. Now, back to Marcus. At lunchtime, I drove to the financial district. I parked 3 blocks from my office because I needed air. Chicago was cold that day, the kind of cold that made you walk faster without realizing it. I entered a small cafe where Marcus and I used to meet during our first year of marriage. Back then, we didn't have much. We shared one checking account. We argued over whether we could afford dessert. Marcus used to joke that if we ever became wealthy, he'd still order the cheapest thing on the menu. I smiled when I remembered that. Then the smile disappeared, because I suddenly wondered when exactly we had stopped being those 2 people. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. I resigned. It's official. I stared at the screen. I typed, okay, we'll talk tonight. Then deleted it. I typed, you should have talked to me before resigning. Deleted that too. Finally, I wrote, okay, and sent it. That single word felt like a door closing. That evening, Marcus came home carrying groceries. He was humming. Actually humming. I hadn't heard him do that in months. What's all this? I asked. Celebration. Celebration? Freedom. He smiled. I didn't. He unpacked steak, vegetables, sparkling water, and a cake from a bakery we both liked. I thought we'd have a nice dinner. I watched him. He looked lighter. For the first time in months, his shoulders weren't tense. Part of me wanted to be happy for him. Another part of me was furious. You really feel good about this? Yes. Even though you don't have another job? I'll find something. When? Soon. That's not a plan. He turned toward me. Tessa, I don't need another lecture. And I don't need to be informed after the decision has already been made. His smile disappeared. I knew this would happen. What would happen? You'd make it about money. I stared at him. Because you made it about money? No, I made it about my life. And then told me I could finance the transition. He sighed. I knew you wouldn't understand. Then explain it. He didn't. Instead, he walked into the bedroom. A few minutes later, I heard drawers opening. I followed him. He was removing shirts from the closet. What are you doing? I need to take a few things to my mother's. Why? Because I'm going to stay there for a couple of nights. I crossed my arms. Running away? Taking space. From what? He looked at me. From this. He gestured between us. That hurt. More than I expected. I looked at the suitcase on the bed. Then something inside me finally broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. It simply became clear. I couldn't continue pretending this was just about his job. For years, Marcus and I had made decisions together. Where to live. Where Nia would go to school. How much to save. Whether we could afford vacations. Whether to help family. Whether to take on debt. But now, apparently, the most important decision of the year belonged to him alone. And my role was to absorb the consequences. I walked into our closet. Marcus watched me. What are you doing? I pulled a suitcase from the top shelf. His expression changed. Tessa. I opened it. You're leaving? I need space too. Where are you going? I don't know yet. He stared at me. I folded 2 blouses, then a pair of jeans, then a sweater. You're serious? Yes. This isn't fair. I stopped folding. Slowly, I looked at him. Fair? He swallowed. You're my wife, and you're my husband. I need you. The words should have softened me. Instead, they made me tired. You needed me when you made the decision. He didn't answer. I packed a few more things. Then I heard a small voice from the doorway. Mom? Nia stood there. Her eyes moved from the suitcase to her father. What are you doing? I immediately knelt. I'm not leaving you. But you're packing. I just need somewhere quiet for a few days. Why? I looked at Marcus. He looked away. That told me everything. I hugged her. You're going to be okay. She whispered into my shoulder. Are you and Dad getting divorced? My chest tightened. No. I wasn't sure whether I was telling her the truth or asking myself to believe it. Tset. That night, I stayed at a hotel near the river. I couldn't sleep. At 2:11 in the morning, my phone rang. Marcus. I answered. Hello. Silence. Then, come home. I sat up. What? Please. His voice sounded different. Marcus, what happened? I found something. What? Another silence. Then he said, I should have told you before I quit. My heart started beating faster. What should you have told me? I can't explain it over the phone. Then explain it now. I need you to come home. No. He sounded startled. No? I'm not coming back just because you decided you want to talk now. Tessa, please. What did you find? He breathed heavily. Then he said, my resignation wasn't the reason I left. I sat completely still. What does that mean? I'll explain when you get here. Marcus? The line went dead. I called back. He didn't answer. I stared at my phone. For the first time since that morning, I wondered if I had misunderstood everything. Maybe this wasn't about burnout. Maybe there was something else. Something Marcus had been hiding. The next morning, I went home. Marcus was sitting at the dining table. He looked like he hadn't slept. There was a folder in front of him. I dropped my bag onto a chair. What is that? He looked up. Sit down. I didn't. Tell me. He pushed the folder toward me. Inside was a printed email from his company. At first, I didn't understand what I was reading. Then I saw the words, Project Safety Review. Below them were photographs of a construction site. I looked at Marcus. What is this? He rubbed his hands together. 3 weeks ago, one of the buildings my company was managing failed an inspection. Was anyone hurt? No, I exhaled. Then what's the problem? The inspection report was changed. I frowned. What do you mean? The original report said there were structural concerns. I looked at the document. The final report didn't. Exactly. Who changed it? My supervisor. And you knew? I found out afterward. Then why didn't you report it? I tried. He opened another document. An email. Then another. Then another. I read them. Marcus had reported concerns internally. His supervisor had ignored them. Then someone had instructed him to sign a revised document. He refused. 2 days later, he resigned. I looked at him. You didn't quit because you were tired. No. You quit because they wanted you to sign something you believed was unsafe. He nodded. Why didn't you tell me? He looked ashamed. Because I thought you'd see me as a failure. I stared at him. What? I was supposed to be the guy who could handle everything. He laughed bitterly. That's who I thought I was. I sat down. For the first time, I understood the weight behind his decision. But another question remained. If you quit for this reason, why did you tell me I could support you? He looked down. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. How did you mean it? I meant that we'd figure it out. You said I could support us. I know. You didn't say we'd figure it out together. He closed his eyes. That was when the real conversation began. Not about his job, not about money, about us. Marcus told me everything. The company had been under pressure to finish a major development before the end of the quarter. There had been cost overruns, delays, internal pressure. The safety concerns threatened the entire project. His supervisor wanted Marcus to sign the revised documentation. Marcus refused. Then came the retaliation. His responsibilities were reduced. His performance was suddenly questioned. He was excluded from meetings. He stopped sleeping. He began having panic attacks in the parking garage. And every night, he came home pretending everything was fine. I listened. When he finished, I asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" He looked at the floor. Because you were already carrying so much. I laughed quietly. So you decided to add one more thing. He looked hurt. I didn't mean to. I know. That was the problem. He hadn't meant to hurt me, but he had. Good intentions didn't erase consequences. I reached across the table and touched the folder. You did the right thing by refusing to sign. He looked at me. But you did the wrong thing by making the decision alone. He nodded. I know. And I did the wrong thing too. He frowned. What did you do? I made myself responsible for everything. You didn't. I did. I looked out at the city. I kept saying yes because I wanted to be supportive. I covered the bills when you were traveling. I took care of Nia when you worked late. I handled your mother's appointments. I managed the savings. I paid the insurance. I organized our calendar. He looked stunned. I didn't realize. I know. I turned toward him. And that's why I packed. His eyes filled with something I couldn't immediately name. Fear, maybe. You thought I was leaving. I thought I needed to leave before resentment became the only thing holding us together. He looked down. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Marcus said, "What if I don't know how to be your husband anymore?" That question broke through every defense I had built. Because it wasn't manipulation. It was fear. Real fear. I reached for his hand. We learn. He looked at me, but not by pretending nothing happened. He nodded. Okay. Then his phone rang. He glanced at it. His face changed. Who is it? He didn't answer. The phone rang again. This time, I saw the name on the screen. Denise, his mother. Marcus answered. Mom? He listened. Then his expression became completely still. What do you mean she called you? I watched him. Mom, slow down. Another pause. What did she say? His face drained. He stood. I'm coming. He hung up. I stood too. What happened? He looked at me. My mother found something. What? He swallowed. She said she found the original safety report. I frowned. So? Marcus looked toward the folder. She said my name is on it. My stomach tightened. You told me you never signed anything. I didn't. Then why is your name there? He didn't answer. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a text. He read it, then handed me the phone. The message was from his mother. Marcus, you need to come immediately. The report isn't the only thing I found. I looked at him. What else did she find? Marcus shook his head. I don't know. Then his phone buzzed one more time. A photograph arrived. An old photograph. I stared at the screen. It showed Marcus standing outside a construction office 5 years earlier. Beside him stood his former supervisor, and behind them, partially visible through a glass door, was a woman I recognized. I had seen her before. At our wedding, at Marcus's mother's house, at Christmas, at Nia's birthday. She was the woman Marcus had always introduced as a former colleague. But she wasn't his colleague anymore. And according to the timestamp on the photograph, she had been standing beside Marcus on the exact day the company first discovered the safety problem. I looked at my husband. Who is she? Marcus didn't answer. His silence was worse than an explanation. Then he whispered, "She was the reason I took that job in the first place." I stared at him, and suddenly, the resignation wasn't the biggest secret in our marriage. The woman in that photograph was. I looked at the photograph again. The woman stood beside Marcus, with one hand resting lightly against his arm. Her name was Evelyn Price. I knew her. Not well. But enough. She had attended our wedding. She had visited Marcus's mother during the holidays. She had once sent Nia a birthday gift. Marcus had always described her as an old professional contact. A woman who had helped him get his first management position. But now, he was telling me something completely different. She was the reason I took that job. What does that mean? Marcus took a breath. Evelyn was my mentor. That doesn't explain the photograph. No. Then explain it. He looked exhausted. 5 years ago, I was unemployed. I remembered. Marcus had been laid off from a smaller construction company. We had just gotten married. I was pregnant with Nia. We were terrified. Evelyn had recommended him for a position at his current company. She helped me when nobody else would, Marcus said. And later, I discovered she was involved in something she shouldn't have been. What? Manipulating project reports. I looked at him. You knew? Not at first. When did you find out? 2 years ago. My stomach tightened. Then why did you stay? Because I thought I could fix it from inside. That sounded exactly like Marcus. He had always believed responsibility meant carrying difficult things alone. He had stayed at jobs he hated because other people depended on him. He had repaired broken things that weren't his responsibility. He had apologized first, even when he wasn't entirely wrong. But now I wondered whether that quality had become his greatest weakness. You couldn't fix the company by yourself, I said. I know that now. He sat down. My mistake was believing that if I stayed quiet long enough, I could protect everyone. Everyone? You, Nia, the people who worked under me. I looked at him. And yourself? He smiled sadly. I wasn't thinking about myself. That is exactly the problem. Liz's. We went to Denise's house that afternoon. She lived on the south side in the same brick home where Marcus had grown up. The place smelled like cinnamon, coffee, and furniture polish. Denise was sitting at the kitchen table, with a folder in front of her. She looked at me. Then Marcus. You finally told her. Marcus nodded. Denise sighed. I was wondering how long it would take. I sat down. What do you know? Denise opened the folder. I know my son has been carrying a secret for 2 years. Marcus stared at her. Mom? She raised a hand. No, you don't get to protect everybody anymore. She pushed the folder toward me. Inside was the original safety report. Marcus's name appeared at the bottom. But it wasn't a signature. It was a witness notation. His handwriting was beside it. Project manager notified of structural concerns. I looked up. He didn't approve this. No, Denise said. He reported it. Marcus nodded. Then why is everyone acting like he was involved? Because the company altered the final documentation, Denise said. I looked at Marcus. Why didn't you go to the authorities? He looked away. I was afraid. It was the first time I had heard him say it. Not tired, not stressed, afraid. If I went public, hundreds of people could lose their jobs. The project could collapse. My coworkers could be blamed. And if the company sued me... He stopped. I finished the sentence. You thought you'd lose everything. He nodded. Denise looked at me. That is why I told him to stop pretending he could carry it alone. She turned toward Marcus. And you didn't listen. No. You told your wife you were quitting without telling her why. Yes. You expected her to financially support you. Marcus lowered his head. Yes. Denise shook hers. Then you weren't protecting your family. You were deciding for them. Silence filled the kitchen. Marcus didn't argue. That told me he knew she was right. That night, I returned home. Not because everything was fixed, because it wasn't, but because I finally understood what had happened. Marcus hadn't quit because he was lazy. He hadn't quit because he wanted to live off my salary. He hadn't betrayed me with another woman. He had been terrified, and fear had made him selfish. That was different. But different didn't mean harmless. The following week became one of the hardest weeks of our marriage. Marcus met with an attorney. I met with our financial advisor. We opened every account, every debt, every bill, every investment, every obligation. For the first time in years, we looked at our financial life together instead of assuming everything would work itself out. And something strange happened. The numbers weren't as bad as I thought, but they weren't as good as Marcus had imagined either. We could survive, but only if we changed how we lived. That was the first lesson. Support wasn't the same as rescue. If Marcus wanted to leave his career, we could make that decision together. But there had to be a plan. So we created one. 6 months of reduced spending. No unnecessary travel. No expensive purchases. Marcus would take temporary consulting work. He would continue pursuing the legal matter against his former employer. I would keep working, but I would stop managing every aspect of our household alone. We divided responsibilities. Real responsibilities. Not helping. Marcus became responsible for school communication, groceries, appointments, and household maintenance. I stopped reminding him. That was important. Because reminding someone to do their responsibility still makes the responsibility yours. 2 months later, Marcus received a call from the attorney. The company had agreed to an external investigation. The original safety report was now part of the evidence. Several employees were interviewed. The investigation found that multiple reports had been altered. Marcus wasn't the only person who had complained. He was simply the first person who had refused to sign. His former supervisor resigned. Evelyn cooperated with investigators. Then came the part I never expected. She called me. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Hello? Tessa? Yes. This is Evelyn. I know. Silence. I owe you an apology. I leaned against the kitchen counter. For what? For letting you believe Marcus was hiding something romantic. I froze. What? She sighed. I saw how you looked at us in some of those old photographs. I said nothing. She continued. Marcus never had an affair with me. I didn't think he did. She laughed softly. You did. I almost smiled. Maybe I had. Not because Marcus had given me a reason to suspect him, but because secrets create shadows. And shadows allow the imagination to fill in what the truth hasn't explained. Evelyn told me something else. Years earlier, Marcus had recommended her for a position at another company. She had later helped him secure his current job. Their professional relationship had become complicated when she discovered corruption inside the organization. Marcus had tried to help her expose it. Eventually, they disagreed about how far to go. She left. Marcus stayed. And that was where the photographs came from. Not romance. History. Still, I thanked her. Then I asked one question. Why didn't Marcus tell me? She paused. Because he thought protecting people meant carrying everything alone. I closed my eyes. That sounded exactly right. 3 months after Marcus quit, something changed. He started building furniture. It wasn't the business he had imagined. It began with our dining table. One of the legs had become loose. Marcus repaired it instead of replacing it. Then he repaired Denise's old bookshelf. Then a neighbor asked him to fix a damaged wooden cabinet. She offered him money. He refused. She insisted. Then another neighbor asked. Then another. Soon, Marcus was spending mornings in a small rented workshop. He wasn't becoming rich. He wasn't building an empire. He was simply doing work he enjoyed. One evening, I walked into the garage and found him sanding a wooden chair. "You're smiling," I said. He looked up. "Am I?" "Yes." He looked at the chair. I forgot what it felt like to make something without being afraid of the phone ringing. I sat beside him. "Do you miss the old job?" He thought about it. "I miss the people." "Not the position?" "No." He smiled. "I thought I wanted a promotion. And now? I think I wanted permission to stop." That sentence stayed with me. Because sometimes people don't know how to leave something until they become miserable enough to believe leaving is their only option. But our marriage wasn't magically healed. That mattered. We still argued, sometimes badly. Once, Marcus bought an expensive piece of equipment for his workshop without telling me. I found the receipt. "What is this?" He looked at it. "A planer." "How much?" He hesitated. I stared. "Marcus," he told me. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was painfully familiar. "You did it again." His face fell. "I know." "No, you don't." I held up the receipt. "You made a financial decision by yourself." He sat down. "You're right. And don't say you're sorry just because I'm angry." He nodded. "I made the decision because I was excited. That doesn't make it okay." "No." "What are you going to do?" He thought. "Return it." I looked at him. "You don't have to return it." He seemed surprised. "I just need you to understand that being married means I don't have to ask permission to buy a chair." He smiled slightly. "But I do have to communicate when the purchase affects our shared goals." "Exactly." He nodded. "That was progress. Not perfection. Progress." 6 months after Marcus resigned, we went back to the hotel where I had spent that first night away from home. We didn't stay there. We simply walked past it. I looked up at the windows. Marcus took my hand. "You packed because you thought I didn't need you." I shook my head. "No." "Then why?" I stopped walking. "I packed because I needed to know whether you understood that I needed you too." He looked at me. That was the truth. For months, I had told myself I was angry because Marcus had quit. I wasn't. I was angry because he had forgotten that I was part of the equation, and Marcus had spent months believing he was protecting me. Neither of us had understood the same thing. Love can become unhealthy when one person decides what is best for everyone. A year after he left his job, Marcus was offered a position by a smaller construction company. The owner had followed the investigation. He respected Marcus for refusing to sign the altered report. The position paid less than his previous job. Marcus came home with the offer. "I don't know if I should take it." "Why?" "Because it's still construction." I looked at him. "What do you want?" "I want the work." "Then what scares you?" "That I'll become the same person again." I thought for a moment. "Then don't." He smiled. "That's your advice?" "Yes." "How?" "Set boundaries before you need them." He laughed. "Sounds simple." It isn't. We talked for 2 hours. Eventually, he accepted, but he negotiated conditions. He would not sign documents he hadn't reviewed. He would not work under unsafe deadlines. He would have direct access to compliance officers. And he would not sacrifice his family without discussing it first. The first day he returned to construction, he sent me a photograph. It was a picture of his desk. On it was a small wooden sign he had made himself. It said, "Don't carry what belongs to everyone." I laughed when I saw it. Then I cried, because I knew it wasn't only for him. It was for me too. 2 years after the morning Marcus announced he was quitting, we were sitting at the same kitchen island. Nia was 16. She had grown taller. Her piano lessons had become competitions. The city outside our windows looked almost the same. But our home felt different. Not perfect. Different. Marcus was reviewing a budget. I was preparing coffee. Nia walked into the kitchen. "You two are still doing spreadsheets together?" Marcus looked at me. "We're romantic like that." Nia rolled her eyes. "That's disgusting." We laughed. Then she sat down. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," I said. She looked at both of us. "Why did Dad quit his job?" Marcus and I exchanged a glance. For years, I had wondered whether we would ever tell her. Now she was old enough. Marcus explained what happened. Not every legal detail. Not every frightening moment, but enough. He told her about pressure, about integrity, about fear, and about the mistake he made by making the decision alone. Nia listened. Then she asked, "Did Mom really pack a suitcase?" I laughed. "Yes." She looked at Marcus. "Were you scared?" He nodded. "Very." "Why?" "Why?" "Because I thought she was leaving me." Nia looked at me. "Were you?" I took a breath. "No." Then I corrected myself. "I wasn't leaving your father. I was trying to make him understand that I couldn't stay in a marriage where my needs were invisible." Nia was quiet. Then she said something that surprised both of us. "That's probably why you two are still together." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What makes you say that?" "Because you finally started telling each other the truth." Neither of us spoke. Sometimes children say the simplest things because they haven't learned how to complicate them. Years later, I kept that old suitcase. It wasn't expensive. It had a scratch near the handle from a trip we took before Nia was born. For a long time, I kept it in the back of the closet. Then one afternoon, Marcus found it. He picked it up. "You still have this?" "Yes." He smiled. "Why?" I looked at him. "Because it reminds me." "Of what?" I thought about the woman I had been that morning. The woman who believed being a good wife meant absorbing whatever life placed on her shoulders. Then I thought about Marcus, the man who believed being a good husband meant protecting everyone from the truth until the truth became impossible to hide. We had both been wrong, so I answered, "It reminds me that love isn't supposed to make one person disappear." Marcus nodded. Then he put the suitcase back. We never threw it away. Not because we were afraid of what happened, because we remembered what it taught us. A marriage isn't built by two people agreeing on everything. It isn't built by one person sacrificing everything. And it certainly isn't built by one partner quietly making decisions while expecting the other to carry the consequences. A marriage is built when two people can sit across from each other and say, "This is what I need. This is what I'm afraid of. This is where I was wrong. And this is what I am willing to change." Marcus had once told me he was quitting his job because he needed to breathe. I thought he was asking me to carry him. Years later, I understood something more complicated. He wasn't asking me to carry him. He was desperately trying to stop carrying everything himself. He simply didn't know how to ask for help without making the decision alone. And I had spent years doing something just as dangerous. I had been helping everyone so quietly that I had forgotten to ask whether anyone was helping me. That was the real reason I packed. Not to punish my husband, not to make him afraid, not to teach him a lesson. I packed because sometimes a person has to step away from the role they've been playing before the people they love can finally see what that role has cost them. And when I came home, I didn't come back because Marcus had promised everything would be perfect. I came back because, for the first time, we were both willing to admit that love wasn't enough by itself. We needed honesty. We needed boundaries. We needed responsibility. And most importantly, we needed to stop confusing sacrifice with partnership. The suitcase stayed in the closet, but neither of us ever packed it again. Supporting the person you love does not mean carrying every consequence of their decisions. Real partnership requires both people to communicate before major choices are made, to accept responsibility for their mistakes, and to recognize that the quiet sacrifices inside a marriage can become resentment when they are never acknowledged. Sometimes the healthiest thing two people can do is stop trying to protect each other from difficult truths and finally face those truths together.